Hello, everybody. Um, Welcome to this Tradition Deep Dive hosted by the Contemplative Studies Centre at the University of Melbourne. I'm Dr. Colin Joyce. I'm an Insight Fellow at the Centre. Today we are joined by Alana Marsh, a Wayapa practitioner and regenerative systems resetter. Alana will also be doing our acknowledgement of country. In this workshop, Alana will explore how our connection to natural rhythms can provide opportunities for reflecting on our health and well-being. The workshop is designed to be interactive, so there will be some small breakout rooms. Please note that the session will be recorded, so please keep your camera and microphone off if that is more comfortable for you. However, we will be pausing the recording for the sharing session at the end of the time. And during the whole of the session, please feel free to post comments in the chat throughout. So I'd like to welcome Alana. You there?
Thanks, Cullen.
Oh, g'day. Good to see you.
Beautiful. If you'd like to have your camera on, I would really love that. I think that, this is a vibrational exchange and it's facilitated by, being able to see each other. So if you are comfortable with your camera on, please do so. I'm just going to invite you to join me I'm going to do a 3-layered acknowledgement to country. And the name of this session is Our Country, Our Bodies. So I'm going to invite you, first of all, to just nestle into where you're seated, closing your eyes if you're comfortable to do so, or just lowering your gaze. Just focusing for a sec on the tongue in the roof of your mouth. And we're going to acknowledge, first of all, the country within our bodies. So extending a little scan from that top of your tongue on the roof of your mouth down through your body, feeling that descent down through the torso, down to your fingertips, connecting in with that microbiome in your gut that helps to determine how you feel and how you function. Descending down further through your thighs, down to your knees. And just that awareness reaching down to the toes, the soles of your feet. Feeling that connection that you have, maybe through your shoes, through the foundations of the building, but that awareness through the soles of your feet to the country beneath your bodies. Then as that awareness rises, just spreading love, light, healing, lightness, that joyful feeling through the body as it rises from the soles of your feet, traveling back up towards your knees, across your thighs, into the torso, from the tips of your fingers up through the arms, and meeting again to land at the top of your tongue, at the roof of your mouth, and just acknowledging the country that you carry around in your body and how you're feeling on this particular day. And maybe a prompt to give thanks that you've taken the time out for this session and the ways that you nurture self, which allow you to experience this existence that we live. And then just allowing that energy, that lightness, that healing, that love and that laughter to move out through all the pores of your body, extending that out to the room that you're in. And we're going to acknowledge traditional custodians. So I'm on land that Wayapa Wuurrk speakers have lived on for thousands and thousands of years. And I owe a deep debt of gratitude, of reciprocity for their ways of knowing, being, and doing, and the opportunity that I have to walk alongside them today as we weave a future together. I also invite you to pay respects to the traditional custodians of wherever you are joining this call from. And as you inhale in, just drawing in from their ways of the past, the present, and the future that nourish life. So I'm exhaling with gratitude to those traditional custodians. As I offer a third acknowledgement, and this is to our shared mother, Mother Earth. So in this moment, I'm inviting you to connect to a place where you feel safe and loved, supported, connected, where all is well in the world, somewhere outside in nature, maybe with water around, maybe it's sunny or snowing, but a collective vibration to that place, knowing that the momentum of sending that intention out joins with the love and regard from other human, and that we pay respects to that shared mother for our existence. We acknowledge the life, the vitality that comes from country. And we're grateful for the opportunity to realize, to make real our potential on the planet. This beautiful blue dot in the solar system. And then as a fourth layer, I'm going to invite you to see yourself joining with others of our species in this journey towards being a contemporary custodian of country. We all have a unique potential, unique contribution, unique perspective. All of these contemporary custodians, different ages, different abilities, different genders, different orientations of life. We're going to exhale gratitude into the potential that we can nurture, that we can cultivate, that we can create as contemporary custodians, as we weave those dynamic dances of life, of vibration in harmony and reciprocity with country, whether that country is within our skin. Maybe it's coming from traditional custodians. Maybe it's coming from country herself. But we have this amazing opportunity as Australians to amplify out into the world what it means to be regenerative, to be aligned to those life-giving vibrations, love, gratitude, healing, connection, peace, harmony, positive ways of dealing with conflict, moving with the biorhythms that we feel within, and the biorhythms that are informed outside of the body by other humans and our more than human kin. So on that next breath in, inhaling that nourishment from being nested in that abundance, exhaling out gratitude, not needing to do anything, just being in that nested abundance. So if you've closed your eyes, please open them or raise your gaze. And I'd like to thank you for joining this session as well, as we we allow a deeper pause or a deeper reflection into the rhythms that are moving within us. Thanks, Cullen, for the introduction. I just want to say I'm here in Melbourne. Lived here for about 17 years, and I'm a Miriam woman. So my maternal grandparents left the Torres Strait in the 1950s, and I've only ever lived on mainland Australia. And I feel so blessed to have had the privilege of knowing the wisdoms and strengths of many First Nations groups, particularly along the East Coast. And I know we have a very evocative, beautiful opportunity to deepen into relationship, not only with their wisdoms and strengths, but also with our own ancestral lineage. As we navigate these somewhat difficult times in modernity at the moment. As Cullen said, I became a Wayapa practitioner in November 2016, and Wayapa is a contemporary offering for our species to deepen connection with the earth, with country. And we understand, that connection to country is the enabling platform for individual, but also collective mind, body, spirit well-being of humans, but also is very much nested within, our more than human kin, say the plants and the animals, the waterways, soil, country itself, the skies, and it's really quite simple, but also extremely profound. So we use 14 elements, and I'm going to play a piece of music for you later that just introduces those elements to you if you're not aware of what they are already. But I wanted to say I've just passed the 10-year anniversary of having had 2 ophthalmic strokes. So they're strokes that affect the part of the brain at the top of the brain stem, and it's the part of the body that maintains systems. So our breathing, our body temperature, and our blood pressure. So when I do acknowledgements to country, I always, most of the time, not always, because I try not to speak in absolutes, but most of the time try to include, something that allows people to nestle in and reflect on what's happening within their skin at that particular time. We have these amazing physical vessels that we get to experience life with. We've been created, however that happened, through this body, and that's how we're experiencing things, that's how we're amplifying things, that's how we're releasing things. It teaches us a lot. And often, I talk about, these 3 systems that really move at different times, at different points of the day or different points of our life. And they're the systems of knowing. So the things that we do up here in our head, our systems of being, and I call that the heart space, and the systems of doing. So the things that we might do with our physical body. And I do a lot of work in the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander space, and I've sort of come to understand the ripple from that sort of umbrella thinking really translates into what I call cultural regeneration. So I became a regenerative practitioner in 2019. And it's just, amazing. If you have the opportunity to do that, I really recommend that. It's a whole range of resourcing frameworks, tools, but also people to assist you in your journey to be, more life affirming, more regenerative. And it's concepts and principles that you can apply to any situation, whether it might be something to do with your own health, or it's, ripples out to contributions to planetary health as just part of the solar system. So I came to understand those 3 systems of knowing, being, and doing in the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander space as, and I really feel that this is so aligned to all of the wisdoms and strengths that I was exposed to. And, it's such a rich beauty that we have in this country, because we have so many different language groups, different First Nations language groups, that coexisted pretty well harmoniously for thousands of years. So there's some amazing messages there for modernity. Anyway, I am getting to the point. I am getting to the reason that I wanted to talk about those 3 things is that I look at cultural regeneration as this sort of upward spiral or upward weave that draws from those three areas. And from the knowing space, it's that cultural literacy or cultural intelligence. And it's not just about, people who aren't Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander having an insight into the way that we might understand the world. I was on a call this morning with a friend from Ireland, and she was talking about how, when they were going in Ireland for, she had a great grandfather, I think, that was part of First World War, enlisted here in Australia. And then he got, as part of his soldier settlement, he had some land or had money to be able to buy land in Ireland. And she was just talking about, a lot of the Irish soldiers that were serving in the First World War, who might have served under the British Army, because they were having all of their treaty stuff and they were trying to assert their sovereignty, they didn't actually speak openly about having served the British Army. And I thought, my gosh, that's a really different perspective for me. So the knowledge, the literacy or the knowledge needs to be multidimensional. So not even just two ways or two worlds, coming together. It's, we live in such a diverse country. So everybody has an opportunity to be seen, to be understood. So with the systems of being, I've looked at that as the cultural humility. And I think, Aboriginal Australia has such a generous and humble way of actually sharing. And there's such amazing generosity within that. And if you haven't experienced that, I really encourage you to put yourself into a place where that may come forward for you, because that cultural humility is something that this continent, used to hum on, and, still does in lots of ways. But, colonization has been quite a disruptor. And then, cultural safety comes from the application of the knowing and the being together. But Wayapa is a Pikarung word, so it comes from the Mara district west of Melbourne, so from around Warrnambool, and it means connect. And Wuurrk is a Gunai word that means country, so it's Gippsland. And so it represents a beautiful fusion that exists within Jamie Thomas and a lot of other Aboriginal people in Victoria as well. There was a lot of forced relocation of people. So a lot of people draw lineage from a number of language groups, but Wayapa Wuurrk means connect to country. And like I said before, we really, we can't, we as humans are just so reliant on nature for our existence. And sometimes we sort of forget that, but it's a beautiful, evocative way to reconnect back to country. And as I said, we use 14 elements. We also have a movement sequence for those particular elements. And it provides a container for people to, even sometimes we get so busy, we just forget about those things that nourish us. So, even just providing a prompt can be really powerful. But sometimes people have, even deeper experiences with that and those 14 elements. So I'm going to get Daniel to cue a piece of music, and it's called the Gratitude Prayer, and it was crafted, and there's two songs I'm going to play for you today, and you're going to receive both of them as YouTube links after the session. So, if something really resonates with you and you want to listen to it again, it's coming to you. But I just wanted to give Daniel the prompt to start this in a sec. What it does is it cycles through the 14 elements. And then there's a really beautiful piece of music in the middle, and then it goes back to those elements again a second time. So you'll hear them twice. And I just wanted to give you an insight into what those elements actually are. So thanks, Daniel. Feel free to close your eyes if you'd like to just listen.
Thank you to Creator. Thank you to the sun. Thank you to the moon. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the earth and the lightning in the sky. This extends our understanding over one. Thank you to the rain. Thank you to our wind. Thank you to our trees and the eagles up on high. Thank you, animals of the land, and those in our rivers and seas. Thank you, hunter-gatherers, your blessing lives within me. Thank you, child's creation, and the weave we carry within. Today we tend that fire, there's potential within our skin. Thank you to Creator. Thank you to the sun. Thank you to the moon. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the earth and the lightning in the sky. This extends our understanding over one. Thank you to the rain. Thank you to our wind. Thank you to our trees and the eagles up on high. Thank you, animals of the land, and those in our rivers and seas. Thank you, hunter-gatherers, your blessing lives within me. Thank you, child's creation, and the weave we carry within. Today we tend that fire, there's potential within our skin.
Thanks, Daniel. So you can see that Wayapa provides a beautiful container to remember the sacredness of self. Just even, that there's something about modernity that tends to erode our sense of sacredness. But I really feel that something just really responds within ourself when we see sacredness, we feel it, we hear it, we smell it, and we can potentially shake off some of the negative things of modernity that I would willingly give up. So from having had, this beautiful relationship with Wayapa, from having had my strokes, from having done that regenerative resourcing, I've really come to understand that living systems are always trying to achieve balance and wholeness. And, with Wayapa, we look at, the lightning, which is, energy trying to equalize in the sky. We look at the wind, which is, the movement of air based on air pressure. And so there's this striving towards balance. And then there's also this need for everything to be there, whether it's the smallest ant or the smallest thing that's beneath the soil, or even, something that we don't have a name for yet. Like the system that we have been lucky enough to be born onto on this planet requires the diversity, the abundance, that, that nested abundance of all the different parts of an ecosystem, whether that's our gut flora or whether that's a bioregional ecosystem. It's all, like a vibrational inclusivity that ripples and echoes. I think, I don't know, it might be infinite, I don't know. And I don't need to know. And I have a certain comfort about letting go of my desire to, where's the evidence? What's going on? There's something within me at an evolutionary level that just really responds to things. And, I think that, we have some of the world's oldest living cultures here on our continent. And if that doesn't tell us something about the sophistication, the beauty, the governance, the, just the ways of knowing, being and doing, it speaks volumes to me. So what I wanted to do, with the title of this being Our Country, Our Bodies, I wanted to, and, I've already sort of said that, I understand that, we have this physical vessel, this body. I would never hazard a guess, and I don't really know, which is okay that I don't know, but I don't know what animates the body. I know the process to create new life. I know the physical act, but, in terms of what it is that comes together to create the potential of creation of a human being, and then what actually leaves the body when we take our last breath, I'm not sure what that is, but I'm sure I feel like it's some sort of vibrational animation, vitality, vibrance that's, thousands and thousands of years that has come forth on this planet. That's, it's been here for 4.5 billion years. So, these things just really just blow our mind in terms of time as well. But with that idea of balance and wholeness, I feel that there's two things that, these living systems are continually striving for. And I think, our bodies are doing it as well, as we cope with all of the messaging, the chemicals, just, some of the disruptive ways that we might be living, just being part of this century in a developed country. We're, looking for that balance and that wholeness. And to me, we can achieve that through, the releasing, but also the amplification of things. So, we see things being shed, whether that's, leaves from a tree, or whether that's, when you look at water in a river, how, there's that water that's in the center that's going along fine, but, around the edges, things can get snagged and it can just go round and around, and the water can become quite brackish, and there's no life, there's no movement there until something shifts. So I wanted to give you a moment, or a few moments, to actually reflect in on self, but also what you're nested within. And then to think about, what is your relationship with self and country? And, it might sound a little bit silly to say, what is your relationship with yourself? But, often we can become so busy that we don't have, that intimate self-awareness. We don't have that time to actually check in, reflect, to feel. So there were three things I wanted you to consider while I get Daniel ready with this next piece of music. And this piece of music, I'll tell you about it first. So it's called The Four Elements, and it's been crafted by Ash Duggan again. So he did the first piece as well. And Ash is a Larrakia man, so from Darwin. And he lives in Melbourne at the moment, and it's the 4 elements, and each element is represented by one of the instruments, or one of the things that you will hear with this piece. So the fire is represented by the sound of the rolling thunder and the storms that come, often in the top end. And often we have lightning strikes which create fires on our continent of Australia. So the fire is reflected in that. And water is also represented from the sound of the rolling thunder and the release, the pressure that's released when the storms come up in the top end and that rain actually falls. And there is also the sound of trickling water in the background. Then he plays, in his language, it's the mamalima, the didgeridoo, and that represents the earth. And then there is also the sound of him playing the flute, which is the air. And, we look at the air moving through the body and through those 2 instruments as well. And we can consider ourselves as holding those 4 elements on behalf of the planet for the time that they might be within our bodies, or, for our lifetime. So, we're actually just part of the feedback loops that the planet is using. So that's a different way to sort of understand, these resources as well. So the piece is called The 4 Elements. And the things that I want you to think about through that, there's 3 things. And if you only get through the first one, or, you stay with the first one, that is totally fine. But I want you to sit with your relationship between self, between you and country. So what is that relationship like? How do you make that happen? What does it bring to you? However you'd like to consider, that relationship between you and country. And then if you want to go beyond that, you can consider, what you might need to be releasing to help that hum at a higher vibration or a higher level. And then what might you like to amplify or bring closer, amp up, magnify, to also have that same result, that increased vibration, that increased function, vitality, whatever it might be. So your relationship to country, what might need to be released, and what you might like to amplify or bring more of into your life. So settle in. I want you to focus on your breath. Close your eyes if you're comfortable to. And just allow these 4 elements to circle through and allow you to just do a little bit of a self-reflective piece. And thanks, Daniel. You don't need to read this. Thanks, Daniel. Really appreciate that. A beautiful, sweet, reflective piece to sit with the biorhythms that are moving through you at the moment. As you considered those potential, 3 questions around your relationship with country within, country without, what you might need to release and what you would like to magnify. I just want to offer a little movement that we can do seated, just to animate our bodies again. So I'm just going to invite you to think about holding the sun in your left hand and placing that low down beside you. And then imagining with the dawn that's rising in the sky, you're bringing in that light, that warmth, that energy. And then it comes down through the center of the body, switching over with the right hand, taking that back up at noon, I suppose. And then as the sun moves in your right hand down to the setting of the sun, just taking that energy down, then bringing that right hand back to your left clavicle, your collarbone, just giving a little wipe down your arm to your fingertips, then swapping that over and bringing the left hand back along the right arm. 2 hands moving down the torso, down the legs, extending down to the floor. And as you bring that back up, just pulling up energy from country through the body, animating self, placing those 2 hands over the heart space, and thinking about that emergence that's happening in the southern hemisphere with the sun, that we're working our way towards the spring equinox, just extending your 2 arms out with that emergence from winter, from those gray spots, from that cold, and just sending out from your heart space into that nested abundance, whatever is resonating within you. So I want to thank you for joining this session, because any opportunity for our species to deepen connection to country is so profound. And, as I said earlier, it's we have these physical bodies, we have this potential of having been created, and we manifest, we release, we amplify from this physical vessel that we have. So connection to the country that you carry around within, whether it's the microbiome on your skin, the flora in your gut, that, it's not a selfish thing to be nurturing and looking after self as a nested observer to the abundance that we are a part of. And I really encourage you to get out into the rising and warming sun and to feel that emergence from the winter that we've experienced here in the Southern Hemisphere, and think about how you might become more connected, how you might deepen into relationship with country. We all have our own unique perspectives and contributions to do from that space. And it's, it's just so nourishing, so wonderful for us. It's almost a gift that you give yourself that no one else can give you either. So thanks, everybody. And it's lovely to see you all.
Thank you, Alana. Thank you, Bonnie. And thank you, everyone, for the workshop today. From my perspective, Alana's, it took me through a workshop on acknowledging country a few months ago, and it stuck with me for a long time. It's really, and so these practices and this kind of connection to country is always something I feel really is really important to engaging with and understanding contemplative practices today in the Australian context and everything we've got going on with the ecological crises. But I'd like to thank you all for joining us today, and I'd just like to invite you to subscribe to the newsletter from the Contemplative Study Centre to stay informed about what we're doing, this series and others. And I look forward to seeing you next time. And if you have any feedback, we'd really appreciate anything that would welcome that very much. So look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thanks.